Welcome to my channel, where we dive into the darker side of human nature. Today we're going to explore a shocking case that will make you question the true cost of wealth and happiness. Meet the Brits family, a seemingly perfect family with a dark secret that will leave you speechless. It's often said that money can't buy happiness, but what if I told you that it can also bring out the worst in people? Wealth can be a double-edged sword, amplifying our flaws and giving us a false sense of invincibility. But what happens when the pursuit of wealth and status becomes an all-consuming force that destroys everything in its path? In 2020, the small town of Pofadder, South Africa, was rocked by a gruesome crime that would make headlines around the world. The case of Saretta and Leon Brits was a complex web of deceit, corruption, and ultimately, tragedy. As we delve into the investigation, you'll be shocked by the twists and turns that led detectives on a wild goose chase. From the initial suspect to the surprising confession that revealed the true perpetrator, this case will keep you on the edge of your seat. So let's take a step back and explore the roots of this tragic story. The Brits family's rise to prominence. The picturesque town of Pofadder, surrounded by breathtaking landscapes, was the perfect haven for the Brits family. The diverse flora and fauna of the region attracted biologists and researchers from far and wide, adding to the town's charm. It was here that the Brits family laid down their roots and built a life that would be the envy of many. In 1976, the family welcomed their first son, Toki, and 3 years later, their second son, Leon, was born. The Brits were considered one of the most affluent families in the area, thanks to the patriarch's savvy business sense. He owned the only major hotel in town, which eventually grew into a thriving hotel and restaurant complex. Both Toki and Leon excelled in school, were active in sports, and received prestigious educations courtesy of their parents' efforts. After completing his studies, Toki left Pofadder to pursue his dreams, while Leon chose to stay behind and learn the ropes of the hotel business from his parents. Leon was intelligent, meticulous, and had a natural flair for entrepreneurship, making him the perfect candidate to take over the family business. The Brits Hotel Complex was the go-to venue for events, parties, and celebrations in Pofadder. It was at one such event that Leon's life took a dramatic turn. Among the guests was a stunning young woman with piercing green eyes and a captivating smile. Leon was immediately smitten, and his life would never be the same again. This chance encounter would set off a chain of events that would change the course of the Brits family's history forever. As we continue to unravel the story of the Brits family, we'll discover the dark secrets that lay beneath their seemingly perfect facade. The intricate web of relationships, the corrupting influence of wealth, and the devastating consequences of their actions will all come to light. Leon, 25 at the time, was immediately smitten with the young beauty he had just met. He mustered up the courage to approach her and introduce himself, only to discover that she was just 14 years old and still in school. Despite her tender age, she appeared much older, and this fact unsettled Leon deeply. Nevertheless, he invited her to dance, and they spent the next hour chatting on the terrace. The young girl's name was Saretta, and from that moment on, Leon couldn't stop thinking about her. He constantly dreamed of their next encounter, but little did he know that their relationship would be fraught with controversy and tragedy. Saretta Kerr was born on September 6, 1990, to a family of immigrants from Eastern Europe. She was the youngest of 3 children, and her family struggled to make ends meet. Her parents' marriage was on the rocks, and when Saretta was just 9 years old, her father tragically died from a venomous snake bite. This left her mother alone to care for 3 children, and Saretta's childhood was marked by hardship and deprivation. All the Kerr children had to work to survive, and Saretta's childhood was far from idyllic. But then, a wealthy suitor appeared in her life, ready to sweep her off her feet. Leon, 11 years her senior, seemed genuinely in love with her, but Saretta was just a teenager, unsure of how to react to the attention from an adult man. Leon was smitten with Saretta, and he spared no expense in showering her with attention and gifts. He would pick her up from school, take her to fancy restaurants, and buy her expensive clothes and jewelry. Soretta, who had grown up in poverty, was swept off her feet by the luxury and attention. She began to see Leon as a ticket to a better life, a chance to build a family and secure a future where she and her children would want for nothing. Despite Soretta's tender age, her mother approved of the relationship, seeing Leon as a kind and decent person who genuinely cared for her daughter. However, Leon's parents were worried about the implications of their son's romance with a minor. They knew that if things went too far, it could be considered a criminal offense. But Leon was resolute, insisting that he would wait until Soretta turned 18 before marrying her. He seemed willing to do whatever it took to make their relationship work. About a year into their relationship, 15-year-old Soretta discovered she was pregnant. She was hesitant to share the news, knowing that it would not be well received by either her mother or Leon. She began to wear baggy clothes to hide her growing belly and became withdrawn and uncommunicative. But as the days turned into weeks, Soretta knew she couldn't keep her secret hidden forever. She decided to confess everything to Leon, hoping that he would understand and support her. Little did she know that this revelation would set off a chain of events that would change their lives forever. Leon's world was turned upside down when he discovered that his girlfriend, Sarah, was pregnant. The news was a shock to him, and he knew that it could not only tarnish his reputation, but also lead to serious legal problems. After all, he had initiated their closeness, and now he could be accused of seducing a teenager, a situation he couldn't allow. Panicked, Leon paid for a private clinic visit, where they confirmed the pregnancy and discovered that Sarah was expecting twins. With the term approaching a critical point, Leon found a doctor at the same clinic who agreed to terminate the pregnancy anonymously. Sarah was devastated, feeling completely crushed by her partner's decision. The man who had promised to love and protect her was now forcing her to terminate their unborn children. Leon, being older, used his influence to pressure Sarah into agreeing to the procedure. He promised that they would have children in the future when they got married, but for now, it would simply destroy their lives and plans for a happy future together. Sarah felt trapped, with no choice but to comply with her boyfriend's demands. The procedure left her suffering from physical pain for several days, but it was overshadowed by a sense of guilt and overwhelming depression. Sarah became withdrawn, staying in her room and crying constantly. She didn't know how to continue living with the weight of her decision. Her mother didn't show much interest in her condition, assuming that her daughter was just upset over some argument with her boyfriend. But Sarah knew that everything wouldn't simply pass once they reconciled. A couple of days later, Leon showed up at Sarah's doorstep, taking her to the city to distract her from her pain. He believed that walking in the park and browsing through stores would help her recover faster and lift her spirits. And indeed, Sarah soon managed to return to her previous life. However, the feelings of resentment and distrust towards her partner lingered, a constant reminder of the pain and betrayal she had endured. 3 years had passed since the traumatic event that had changed Sarah's life forever. Now, in her senior year of high school, she discovered she was pregnant again. This time she was just a few months away from becoming an adult, and this unexpected condition was not supposed to cause any particular issues. However, when she told Leon about it, he reacted very negatively, insisting that his beloved terminate the pregnancy. He argued that they were too young to start a family. But Sarah was resolute. She firmly refused, stating that she would not do it and would keep the child, even if it meant raising it on her own. After some thought, Leon eventually made an official proposal, presenting her with a beautiful diamond ring. By then, their once tender feelings had considerably dulled, but this renewed promise and Sarah's ongoing pregnancy left him with no choice. By the time Sarah graduated from high school, the changes in her figure were already obvious. And in the fall, as soon as she turned 18, the couple had a lavish wedding. The newlyweds appeared quite happy, but each had certain doubts about the correctness of their decision. A few months later, the couple had their first son, and 2 years after that, twin boys were born. The family lived in affluence, able to indulge in anything they wanted. From the outside, they looked like a successful, well-off, and happy family. The business founded and developed over many years by Leon's parents was quite profitable over time. But beneath the surface, the scars of their past still lingered, a constant reminder of the sacrifices they had made for the sake of their relationship. The man's entrepreneurial spirit didn't stop at the family business. He also started his own chain of stores and fast food eateries, and his ventures were on the rise. With the family business flourishing, it seemed like nothing could go wrong. However, from the mid-2010s, the family began to experience troubles and misfortunes. In 2014, Lyon's father passed away suddenly due to long-standing heart issues. His mother's health deteriorated rapidly from the shock of losing her husband, and she soon showed signs of dementia. The brothers were forced to place her in a specialized clinic for necessary care and proper attention. Toki, Lyon's brother, returned to his hometown after many years away to help his brother manage the business. Together they took over the operation of a hotel. At the same time, Lyon decided to involve his wife in the family business, something she had long aspired to do. It was decided to register a mining equipment and tool store in her name. Sarah dove into work while also continuing to raise their 3 young sons. Brits, the eldest son, started elementary school in his hometown of Poitiers. As the twins grew older, the parents faced the pressing issue of choosing a suitable educational institution for all their children. The challenge was that finding quality education in South Africa was not straightforward. The spouses found a good school in the nearby city of Kakamas, about 75 miles from Brit's home. But there was no need for daily travel back and forth. The couple decided to rent a spacious house in Kakamas, where Sarah moved with the sons. Lyon, however, stayed in Poitiers, as he could not leave the business and manage affairs remotely. However, the wife had to step back from managing the store, although she really enjoyed it and was quite successful at it. The woman dedicated herself entirely to raising the sons, and they only visited home to see their husband and father on weekends and holidays. Lyon himself rarely came to Kakamas due to his busy schedule. Initially, it seemed that everything was in order, but over time, the spouses drifted further apart, and their feelings significantly cooled. In 2018, Sarah started having health problems, which she did not take seriously at first. However, an examination revealed that the young woman had oncology and problems with the cardiovascular system. Soon she underwent surgery to remove the malignant tumor and was prescribed a treatment course. Fortunately, all procedures were timely, saving the life of the mother of 3. But from then on, for prevention, she needed periodic therapy at a clinic in Johannesburg, which was quite expensive. The Brits family had the means, and Lyon would never skimp on the health of his son's mother. Additionally, Sarah hired a nanny and a housekeeper who helped her around the house and looked after the children, which was essential. When the woman went for treatment by that time, the spouses had drifted so far apart that each essentially lived their own life. The young woman started an affair in Johannesburg, so when going for another course of preventive therapy, she would not stay in a hotel, but at her lover's place. Lyon apparently also periodically had women, as compromising photos and messages found in his phone suggested. In fact, nothing but their 3 children bound the couple together anymore. The family issues did not affect the business, which continued to thrive. The hotel, stores, and restaurant chain were generating impressive profits, some of which Lyon invested in real estate in major cities, earning a good income from rentals. Undoubtedly, their family was not only the wealthiest in Poitiers but also among the most affluent in the northern Cape province. Naturally, the Brits had many enviers and ill-wishers, whose numbers grew in proportion to the profitability of their business. Lyon, his parents, and his brother regularly received threats and various demands. Lyon himself often confided in his wife that he had long felt unsafe and feared that someone might try to take away his life's work. In each of Lyon's offices, as well as at his and his parents' homes, there were safes and cleverly disguised hiding places storing cash in various currencies, securities, diamonds, jewelry, and gold bars. Sarah knew only about some of them, specifically those in their own home in Pot. Initially, the threats were a serious concern, but over time, as the man began receiving them daily, he simply stopped paying attention to them. He believed they were just attempts to intimidate him. As the ill-wishers had never tried to act on their threats, however, a tragedy soon occurred that ended Lyon's life. On October 7, 2020, Lyon's wife called him and asked him to check on their dogs, which, according to a neighbor, had gotten out. Leon promised to call back as soon as he arrived and checked that everything was in order, but the return call never came. Concerned, Sarah called her husband's number several times, but no one answered. Leaving the children with the nanny, she decided to go to their home to check on Leon herself. She drove to Poeter. The front door was unlocked, but it seemed that no one was home. It was suspiciously quiet inside and no one responded to her calls. She then went to the backyard where she found her husband's body floating face down in the pool. There were wounds on his back, the water was tinged pink with blood, and it was clear that he was deceased. Panicking, Sarah called the police, the emergency services, and then dialed Toki, informing him of the incident. When law enforcement arrived, they immediately cordoned off the house as a crime scene. It was evident that the businessman's death was violent. The body had several stab wounds and signs of a struggle. A safe in the house had been opened and its contents taken. An initial theory was that a burglar had broken into the house, and the homeowner, returning unexpectedly, had caught them off guard, paying with his life. However, many other valuable items in plain sight remained untouched, suggesting the burglars had specifically targeted what was in the safe. The murder of the successful and wealthy businessman quickly made a lot of noise, hotly discussed in the media and on social networks, generating numerous rumors, gossip, and speculations. Many knew about the long-standing threats against Brits and believed that competitors or ill-wishers had fulfilled their threats. However, the first and key suspect in the case became Toki, who had been managing the family business with his brother for the last few years. First, he had visited Leon shortly before the tragedy and was considered the last person to see him alive. Second, their mother was in very poor health, with doctors giving her only a few months to live, and her will reportedly was stored at the younger son's house. The prevailing theory was that the elder brother disagreed with the business mostly going to Leon and wanted to access the will to alter it. This explained why the other items in the house remained untouched. It was also suspected that he did not act alone, and murder was not part of the original plan. Toki categorically denied any involvement and stated that under no circumstances would he harm his own brother, especially since they had never had disputes or disagreements over financial matters. He sought support from Sarah, who asserted that she believed him and would help find the best lawyer to prove his innocence. For nearly 2 months, the investigation was at a standstill, with no new evidence, leads, or witnesses emerging. However, one day, 35-year-old Jacques Van Van walked into the police station and offered to make a deal by pleading guilty and revealing all his accomplices in exchange for a reduced sentence. It turned out that Jacques had once attended the same school as Sarah. They were friends, and he even had feelings for her, but she did not reciprocate, and soon started a relationship with Leon. The former friends had not seen each other for many years, but one day they coincidentally met at a shopping center and started talking. At that time, Jacques was going through a tough period. He had divorced his wife, lost his job, developed a dependence on alcohol, and was in dire need of money. Sarah saw that her former admirer still harbored tender feelings for her, so she began to confide in him about her unhappy marriage. She claimed that her husband mistreated her, was abusive, but she could not leave him because he threatened to take their sons and leave her with nothing. This topic was painful for Van Ven, since his ex-wife had barred him from seeing their children after the divorce, and he genuinely empathized with Sarah and wanted to help. They exchanged phone numbers, and a few days later, Sarah, having devised a cunning plan, called her former friend and tearfully told him that her husband had beaten her. She said she couldn't leave him, and the only solution was to eliminate the tyrant. Sarah was very persuasive, and Jacques believed her. Moreover, she promised him $500,000 South African rand as payment, and he, as mentioned, was in desperate need of money. Jacques agreed to help Sarah, but he did not want to do the dirty work himself, so he decided to hire other people. The plan was developed in early 2020, but due to the global epidemic that swept the world, its execution had to be delayed. During this difficult time, the Brits' family business suffered colossal losses. A store and part of the restaurants had to be closed, and Lion wanted to sell the hotel, which his wife did not agree with. In late September, the conspirators returned to the original plan, but Jacques requested half of the payment up front. However, due to financial difficulties, Sarah could only withdraw 100,000 rand and also gave her accomplice her engagement ring. With this money, Jacques hired a friend named Enrique Williams, who had drug issues and was willing to commit murder for money. However, Williams was afraid he couldn't handle a grown, strong man alone, so he brought along his 25-year-old friend Amanta Bari to share the fee. Sarah gave the criminals access to the house, informed them about the safe's location, and allowed them to take whatever they liked to make the robbery look more plausible. The only condition was that the dogs should not be harmed, so she let them out in advance. The neighbors saw this and called her, signaling that Williams and Bari were in the house. After which she called her husband and lured him into a deadly trap. When the unsuspecting man entered the house, he was struck on the head with a baseball bat by one of the lurking criminals, and another attacked him with a knife, leaving him no chance. Lyon was stabbed 8 times and hit with the bat a dozen times before his lifeless body was thrown into the pool. After opening the safe, the criminals found no money, only securities, diamonds, and gold bars. They handed over the loot to Jacques, who in turn gave everything to Sarah. The criminals decided not to take anything else from the house, fearing they would leave too many traces. They were only counting on the large sum promised by the client. Torment of conscience and fear of inevitable punishment. Jacques was not supposed to appear at the crime scene himself. Sarah feared he would be caught on surveillance camera footage and recognized as Toki had seen him a couple of times and knew he was his brother's wife's school friend. He was only supposed to pass on the advanced payment and instructions to the accomplice. However, Jacques was anxious to ensure everything went smoothly and drove past the Brits' house several times to make sure the perpetrators were in place and the victim had arrived. Directly to them, his car was captured on camera, and although the license plate was not clearly visible, the police were interested in the vehicle, meaning that finding its owner was only a matter of time. Furthermore, there was no money in the safe, and all the family's accounts were frozen during the investigation. Sarah had no way to pay the hired perpetrators, as selling diamonds, bars, or securities would expose her. She asked them to wait, but Williams and Bari were not willing to wait and began to threaten Jacques. Desperate, Jacques had not received the money, was plagued by guilt, and his accomplice threatened to deal with him. He realized that he would end up either behind bars or follow Leon. Jacques shared his concerns with his sister, who told their mother, and together the women convinced him to voluntarily surrender to the police and reveal the other participants in the plot to secure a more lenient punishment. True motives. In his full account to the police, Jack believed he had done a noble act, as he saw Lyon as a man who mistreated his wife, was abusive, and threatened to take away the children. However, it was actually Sarah who initially directed the police to consider Toki as the main suspect, citing a will and property disputes between the brothers. The authorities decided to detain and interrogate the woman to uncover her true motives. It turned out that she and her husband had fallen out of love long ago and each was living a separate life. Sarah had a lover in Johannesburg, whom she wanted to join permanently. However, when she expressed her desire to divorce Lyon, he categorically refused to agree. He also threatened to leave her with nothing and take the sons if she decided to leave him. It's hard to say what motivated Lyon, but it's likely he still had feelings for his beautiful wife and hoped to mend their relationship. Sarah, however, decided that she would inherit his money and business upon his death, which would allow her and her lover to live comfortably. She also saw an opportunity to rid herself of Toki by framing him, thus becoming the sole owner of the hotel, stores, and restaurants after her mother-in-law's death. Her plan might have succeeded if there had been money in the safe, and she had managed to pay off the hired perpetrators. Trial and sentencing of all participants. The trial of the criminal quartet took place in the spring of 2021. Each participant's role in this high-profile case was considered. Jack Van Vuren, who made a deal with the prosecution, told everything in detail and turned in his accomplices. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 5 years. The hired perpetrators, Enrique Williams and Amanta Bari, were found guilty of premeditated murder with special cruelty and robbery. They were sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. As for the widow who orchestrated the murder of her own husband, she managed to convince the court that she had been a victim from the very beginning of their relationship. She testified that Lyon coerced her into intimacy when she was just 14 years old, and a year later, when she became pregnant, Brits forced her to terminate the pregnancy at a fairly late stage. In recent years, despite the disappearance of love, he refused to divorce her and threatened to take the children. Nevertheless, Sarah Britz was sentenced to 25 years in prison, with the possibility of parole from the beginning of her term. The court considered her remorse and heartfelt confession, as well as her status as the mother of 3 minor children. However, 3 years after the sentence was passed, she remains incarcerated. Thanks for watching, guys. Subscribe to my channel for more shocking stories ahead of you.